Chapter 6. Frozen Time. The street was lit so brightly, as if it were a normal weekday evening. Daniel stood on the border of light and darkness. Behind him was the impenetrable forest. Ahead lay a living town. Or, to be more precise, a town pretending to be alive. He walked slowly along the shoulder of the road. He didn't need the flashlight anymore. He turned it off to avoid attracting attention, if there was any attention to attract here. The houses on both sides of the street looked perfect. Too perfect. No peeling paint, no broken windows, no signs of 27 years of abandonment. As if the people had left exactly 5 minutes ago. Daniel approached the first house on the left. A children's bicycle lay on the lawn, red, with training wheels. There wasn't a speck of dust on the seat. He peered into the living room window. A floor lamp was on inside. An open newspaper lay on the coffee table. The television stared into the room with its black square screen. No signs of a struggle, no signs of hasty packing. They simply vanished. Daniel moved further toward the center. Main Street, the exact one he had seen in the photograph from the envelope. This was where the commercial buildings began. A Texaco gas station. Gas prices, $1.05 per gallon. 1998 prices. Sally's Diner. Through the panoramic windows, Daniel saw plates on the tables, half-eaten slices of pie, mugs of coffee. Nothing had rotted. Nothing was covered in mold. The town was in stasis. Time here had stopped on that very night in November. Daniel walked down the center of the road, trying to step as quietly as possible. Suddenly, he realized what was missing. Why the silence seemed so deafening. There was no sound of generators. No humming from the power lines. Where was the electricity coming from? How were the street lamps burning if the power plant had been disconnected from the grid long ago? There was no answer. He reached the intersection and froze. To his left stood a 2-story red brick building. A pharmacy on the first floor. Apartments on the second. He recognized this building. It was the exact one from the photograph. Daniel looked up. The second window from the left on the top floor. Right where the little girl had stood. The window was dark. No silhouette. But the photograph he had received was taken from a specific angle. From the perspective of someone standing right in front of the pharmacy door. Daniel approached the door. The glass was transparent. A closed sign hung on the door. He grabbed the handle. Cold brass. He pressed down. A quiet click echoed. The door was unlocked. It gave way with a slight creak that sounded like a gunshot in the dead silence. Daniel stepped inside. It smelled of medicines, dust, and old paper. It was dark inside. The light from the street barely illuminated the counters. He turned his flashlight back on. He swept the beam across the shelves. Aspirin, vitamins, toothpaste, packaging designs he hadn't seen since childhood. At the far end of the sales floor was a door. Above it hung a sign, "Private, stairs to second floor." Daniel swallowed. Every cell in his body begged him to turn around and leave, to run into the forest before the streetlights went out. But he had to know. He had to figure out who took the photo and who sent it. He approached the door, pushed it. Behind it began a narrow wooden staircase leading up into absolute darkness. Daniel switched the flashlight to his left hand. With his right, he felt for the handle of the hunting knife on his belt and placed his foot on the first step. The staircase creaked, and at that exact moment, a sound came from above, from the second floor. A footstep. A single heavy step on a wooden floor. And then, a quiet, stifled whisper right above his head. End of chapter. Let's look at 7 B1, B2 words from this part of the story. First, border. It means the edge or boundary of an area. Daniel stood on the border between light and darkness. Second, peeling. It means coming off in thin layers. There was no peeling paint on the houses. Third, abandonment. It means the state of being left empty or deserted. There were no signs of abandonment. Fourth, stasis. It means a state of no change or movement. Time in the town was frozen in stasis. Fifth, grid. It means a network of power lines that supplies electricity. The town was disconnected from the grid. Sixth, silhouette. It means a dark shape against a lighter background. He saw no silhouette in the window. And seventh, stifled. It means suppressed or held back. He heard a quiet, stifled whisper. Now let's continue. Chapter 7. Meeting the Gaze. Daniel stopped breathing. The whisper was unintelligible, as if someone were trying to speak, but had no tongue in their mouth, only a wet, hissing exhale. He took his hand off the knife. A knife wouldn't help here. Instinct told him that weapons were useless against this. Another footstep upstairs. The floorboards creaked. Someone approached the window. That very window. Daniel began to climb. Slowly, one step at a time, trying to tread on the edges of the stairs where the wood creaked less. 12 steps. They felt like a marathon. Finally, he reached the second floor landing. A narrow hallway. Wallpaper with tiny flowers, yellowed by time. Ahead was a half-open door to an apartment. That was exactly where the sound had come from. Daniel stepped right up to it, pushed the door with his fingertips. It swung open silently. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness of the room. A normal living room. A couch. A rug. A television with a convex screen. No one. Daniel crossed the threshold. It was colder in the room than outside. The air here felt heavy, dense, as if he were walking through water. He slowly turned the flashlight to the corner of the room. Empty. Turned it toward the window. It was wide open. The night curtains fluttered slightly, even though there wasn't the slightest breeze outside. Daniel approached the window, looked out. From this vantage point, there was a perfect view of the street, of the empty intersection, of Sally's diner. This was exactly where the photographer had stood, or the one who was being photographed. Daniel placed his hands on the windowsill. The glass was dirty, but the frame looked sturdy. Suddenly, he noticed something on the windowsill, in the layer of old, ingrained dust. Handprints. Fresh. Small. A child's. His heart skipped a beat. She was here, just a moment ago. A radio hissed with static. Daniel flinched. The sound didn't come from his pocket. It came from a corner of the room he hadn't yet shone his light into. He spun around, aimed the flashlight beam. On a small coffee table sat a walkie-talkie, an old Motorola police radio. A green indicator light blinked on it. Heavy breathing broke through the step from the speaker. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Daniel took a step toward the table. The breathing on the radio stopped. And then the exact same voice he had heard in his home from the broken receiver said, "Look down." The voice was clear, loud. It wasn't asking, it was commanding. Daniel slowly turned back to the open window, approached the edge, and looked down at the street. Right below the window, on the sidewalk, in a circle of light from a street lamp, stood a person. He was standing with his back to the building. His figure seemed strangely familiar. The jacket, the jeans, the backpack. Daniel felt ice-cold sweat run down his spine. Numbness gripped his entire body. The person below was dressed exactly like him. The figure stood motionless, and then slowly began to raise its head. The person below tilted his face upward. Daniel tried to recoil from the window, but his body wouldn't obey. He was paralyzed with terror. The person below looked at him. It had no face, only smooth, white, porcelain-like skin, with no eyes, nose, or lips. And in its hands, the faceless figure held an old Polaroid film camera. A flash, a bright, blinding flash of light struck Daniel's eyes from below. At that exact moment, all the street lamps in Grayford went out at once. The town plunged into an absolute black void. And in this darkness, right behind Daniel's back, in the very room, someone whispered, "Smile." Let's look at 7 B1, B2 words from this part of the story. First, unintelligible. It means impossible to understand. The whisper was unintelligible. Second, exhale. It means to breathe out. He heard a wet, hissing exhale. Third, landing. It means the area at the top of a staircase. He reached the second-floor landing. Fourth, convex. It means curved outward. The television had a convex screen. Fifth, breeze. It means a gentle light wind. There was no breeze outside. Sixth, vantage. It means a position with a good view. From this vantage point, he could see the street. And seventh, porcelain. It's a hard, white ceramic material. The figure had smooth, porcelain-like skin. Now, let's continue with the next chapter. Chapter 8. Blind Spot. The darkness was absolute. Thick. Tangible. The camera flash showed a white spot on Daniel's retina. He doesn't learn anything. Just a pulsating light in front of the eye. The words spoken right above his ear seemed to freeze the blood in his veins. Smile. It smelled like old spittle, ozone, and something sweetish and putrid. Adrenaline hit my head. The survival instinct that, having slept for many years, wakes up in a split second. Daniel did not turn around. I didn't shout. He simply threw his hand back from the flashlight held in it. Backhand. The flashlight hit something hard. The sound was like hitting a marble statue. A heavy blow, throwing Yogo forward. He tripped over the carpet and fell to the floor. Lighted up the lantern. The lantern rolled towards the wall. Its beam flickered. Once. Two. And went out forever. Daniel rolled onto his back, grabbing a knife. Freeze. Silence. He lay on the floor, breathing heavily, and listened into the darkness. The white spot in front of the eye began to completely disintegrate into gray dots. Vin still hasn't learned anything. Is it in the room? Or is it gone? There was a sound. Light rustle of fabric. Everything was still here. And it moved. Daniel jumped to his feet. I remembered the layout. The door should be straight ahead, a little to the right. Vin rushed forward. My shoulder hit the door frame painfully. My fingers touched the wallpaper. Corridor. He ran onto the landing. I tripped over my foot. Flew down. Head over heel, hitting shoulders, elbows, knees on a hard tree. I didn't feel the pain at all. The fear will be stronger. Daniel collapsed on the floor first, on top of the pharmacy. The knife flew out of his hands and flew somewhere under the counter with a clang. He jumped to his feet. He rushed to the front door. The glass was cold. He pressed the handle. He fell into the street and froze. Let's look at 7 B1, B2 words from this part of the story. First, tangible. It means so real that you can physically feel it. The darkness was thick and tangible. Second, retina. This is the light-sensitive layer at the back of your eye. The flash left a spot on his retina. Third, putrid. It means decayed and having a very unpleasant, rotten smell. He smelled something sweetish and putrid. Fourth, adrenaline. This is a hormone that gives you sudden energy in dangerous situations. Adrenaline hit his head. Fifth, instinct. It means a natural, automatic reaction. His survival instinct woke up in a split second. Sixth, marble. It's a hard, smooth stone, often used for statues. The sound was like hitting marble. And seventh, rustle. It means a soft, light sound like fabric or leaves moving. He heard a light rustle of fabric. Now, let's continue with the next chapter. Chapter 9. The residents. The town had changed. The street lamps were not burning. The houses stood as black monoliths. Not a single window held light anymore. But the street was not in absolute darkness. Through the fog came a faint, unnatural glow. It emanated from the ground itself, as if the asphalt had absorbed the moonlight. Daniel pressed his back against the brick wall of the pharmacy. His breath escaped his mouth in white clouds of vapor. The cold had intensified. He looked around. The intersection that had been empty just 5 minutes ago was now filled. They stood everywhere. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of figures on the road.
On the sidewalks, near the gas station, near the diner. The very same people Ella Morris had seen. They stood motionless, with their backs to him, facing the forest. Daniel covered his mouth with his hand to muffle the sound of his own breathing. What did they want? What were they waiting for? Suddenly there was a click. The very same sound he had heard when the street lamps had begun to light up, but this time it was not electricity clicking. The neck of one of the figures clicked, a man in a work jumpsuit. He was standing 10 meters from Daniel. His head jerked to the right, sharply, unnaturally, like a broken mechanical doll. Then another figure clicked, a woman in a summer dress. Her head turned to the left. Click, click, click. The sound began spreading through the crowd. They were waking up. Or rather, they were beginning to search. Daniel understood one terrible thing. They could not see him, but they knew he was here. They could hear him. He had to hide, immediately. His gaze darted across the street. Sally's diner. The glass doors were only 20 steps away. Daniel pushed off from the wall. He moved like a shadow, on his tiptoes, shifting his weight from heel to toe. 5 steps, 10. One of the figures suddenly raised its arm, then the other, and slowly began to turn around. Daniel froze, right in the middle of the road. The figure turned to face him. It was an old man, in a gray suit. But he had no face, only smooth white skin, no eyes, no mouth. How could he search for him if he had no eyes? The old man moved his head from side to side, as if sniffing. A blind predator. Daniel took a slow step backward. The sole of his boot crunched on glass. A small shard on the asphalt. The sound was microscopic, but in the dead silence it rang out like an explosion. All the figures at the intersection froze. The clicking stopped. And then, simultaneously, all hundreds of heads turned in Daniel's direction.
Let's look at 7 B1, B2 words from this part of the story. First, monoliths. It means large, solid, and imposing structures. The houses stood as black monoliths. Second, emanated. It means came out from a source. The glow emanated from the ground itself. Third, absorbed. It means took in or soaked up, as if the asphalt had absorbed the moonlight. Fourth, intensified. It means became stronger or more extreme. The cold had intensified. Fifth, muffle. It means to make a sound quieter by covering it. He covered his mouth to muffle his breathing. Sixth, jerked. It means moved suddenly and sharply. His head jerked to the right. And seventh, predator. It means a hunter that stalks its prey. The figure moved like a blind predator. Now, let's continue with the next chapter. Chapter 10. Signal. They stood facing him. Hundreds of faceless white masks. Daniel didn't wait. He broke into a run, sprinted towards Sally's diner. Behind him rose a sound. Not a scream. It was the sound of stones grinding against each other, and the sound of dozens of running feet. They came after him. Daniel hit the glass door of the diner with his shoulder. The door gave way. He burst inside, knocking over a couple of chairs. He spun around, slammed his hands against the doors, forcing them shut. The lock clicked. He threw the bolt. He crawled away from the glass, behind the bar counter, dropped to his knees, hiding behind the wooden panel. A second later, the first body struck the glass. Then a second.
Then a third. The glass groaned, but held. It was thick plate glass from the 90s. Daniel sat on the floor with his hands pressed over his ears. The blows came one after another. Dull. Heavy. They weren't trying to break the glass with rocks. They were simply throwing their bodies against it. He squeezed his eyes shut, tried to convince himself this was a dream, that he would wake up on his couch any moment now. Ding! Daniel opened his eyes. Ding! The sound came from directly above his head. He looked up. On the wall behind the bar counter hung a payphone, an old coin-operated telephone. A quarter dropped into the change return tray with a clink. Daniel stared at the payphone. There was no electricity in the town. The phone lines had been cut long ago. But a second later, the payphone rang. Long, loud, demanding. The pounding against the glass outside fell silent for a moment. The creatures had heard the sound too. The payphone rang a second time. Daniel slowly rose to his feet. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely make a fist. He reached for the receiver, lifted it from the hook, and brought it to his ear. At first he heard only static, the exact same static as the radio in his apartment. "Hello?" Daniel whispered. Someone on the other end swallowed. A deep, hoarse male voice spoke. "You came." Daniel pressed his back against the wall. "Who is this?" "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you made a mistake. You came here at night." Are you a person? Are you from this town?" Daniel's voice was breaking. The man on the other end ignored the question. "Listen to me very carefully. If you want to survive until dawn, you need to remember 3 rules." A body struck the diner glass again. A thin web of cracks began to spread across the surface. "They're breaking through!" Daniel shouted into the receiver. "The glass won't hold!" "It will hold," the voice answered calmly. "They cannot come inside unless you let them in yourself." "What?" "Rule 1. The voice continued, enunciating every word. "Never look at their faces. If they understand that you see emptiness, they will take your face." Daniel remembered the Polaroid flash, remembered the old man with no eyes. He felt sick.
Rule 2. Do not trust the light. If a light turns on somewhere, run toward the darkness. Light in this town is bait. And the third, Daniel whispered, watching the crack in the glass grow wider.
A long pause hung on the line. Third, if you hear a child crying.
The line went dead. A flat dial tone filled the receiver. Hello? Hello? Daniel struck the receiver against the phone. What if I hear crying? He dropped the receiver. It hung swinging on its metal cord, back and forth. And at that moment, from the corner of the diner, from the kitchen, came a sound. Quiet. Plaintive. Someone was crying in a thin, childlike voice.
Let's look at 7 B1, B2 words from this part of the story. First, faceless. It means having no face. He saw hundreds of faceless white masks. Second, grinding. It means rubbing together with a harsh, scraping sound. He heard the sound of stones grinding against each other. Third, burst. It means suddenly broke or entered with force. He burst inside the diner. Fourth, bolt. It's a sliding bar used to lock a door. He threw the bolt to keep them out. Fifth, payphone. It's a public telephone that requires coins to make a call. He saw an old payphone on the wall. Sixth, receiver. It's the part of a telephone you hold to your ear. He reached for the receiver. And seventh, plaintive. It means sounding sad or mournful. He heard a quiet, plaintive cry. Now let's continue with the next chapter.